Hello, Peter for Sunrise Zero Cyrus here, and well, with the release of Final Fantasy X Next 2 HD release being out for quite some time, I thought it'd be fun to quickly review a Final Fantasy game. I decided to hold off X Next 2 since I do plan on reviewing them when I get the HD remaster, eventually. So yeah, 13 I already reviewed, and I haven't played any other installment in the 13th series. As for the other Final Fantasy games I played, well, I play Final Fantasy Tactics, though I want to make this a short review, so I probably hold off on that since I can talk a lot about Final Fantasy Tactics. Tactics Advanced, I don't remember too much, as well as Dirge of Cerberus. And Crisis Core I haven't finished yet. So, there's really only one game left to my disposal. And that game is Final Fantasy XII. Oh boy, does this game have a really mixed reception in the Final Fantasy fanbase. Well, the Final Fantasy fanbase I've seen on interwebs. People either love it or hate it. Hey, I don't think any of my friends that I know even like the game. Albeit gaming critics liked it well enough when it was released, but as the years went by on the PS2, it certainly got more negativity. Though there are some places on the internet where I see Final Fantasy XII being seen in a more positive light. But regardless, Final Fantasy XII is probably one of the most controversial Final Fantasy games to date, rivaling Final Fantasy XIII and VIII to some degree in terms of discussing their quality in the series. So, what's my opinion on one of the most controversial Final Fantasy games of the series? It's okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, strangely enough, I don't hate it like some fans do, or love it like some fans do. I'm probably more mixed on it than 13, where I say that's an okay game. 12 has some strong elements, and it has a few neat ideas, but at the same time, it really does have a lot of things detracting from the game. Heck, some mechanics contradict each other in the game, in my honest opinion. So when people say they hate it, I understand. Though when they say they liked it, I can also understand. So for this quick review, I list off first the good things I think Final Fantasy XII does, and the not so good things that Final Fantasy XII unfortunately does. So let's start out with the good things. Number 1, the visuals. I mean, what else can you say? If there's one thing that's constant about the Final Fantasy series, is that it always pumps out games with gorgeous graphics. Well, at least for the main titles games. And Final Fantasy XII is no exception. The character models, the environments, everything look gorgeous. And the art style is also pretty good. Okay, the character design for Vaughn is absolutely atrocious, but most of it is good. I especially like how the people and world is designed. Each city got such a distinctive look to it, and the people are distinctive as well in terms of what clothing they wear. It just feels really alive, which gets to my second point. Number 2, the world. The world of Final Fantasy XII is just amazing. It's brilliant. The variety of location and monsters, how alive the town can feel, the grand scope of the towns and cities, and just the small touches here and there that just makes it feel like a real thriving world, from the weather system to the encyclopedia that gives the game considerable amount of lore, to the loot system, to how the clan Centennial Guild hunt quest feels really integrated into the game world itself. Heck, how you can even go into a cruise ship and go explore around a cruise ship when you're going from one area to the next. All this and more just make this world so fantastic. Final Fantasy XII is probably the only main Final Fantasy game where I felt like I was in the real world. Well, out of all the Final Fantasy games I played. It's the kind of immersion that I usually feel when I play a Bethesda game. And Final Fantasy XII doesn't even have a rank AI system for most of its NPCs, with most of the NPCs you see in Final Fantasy XII being the normal type of NPCs you see in usual JRPGs, with them mostly standing in one place or some of them pacing back and forth. And I also love how you can encounter various NPCs in the wilderness that will help you because they're hunting monsters for their job. And I think it's really neat to see the unique dynamics in the monsters' behavior in this game, such as some monsters attacking you on sight, which is norm, but also seeing some monsters hunt other monsters, seeing some other monsters just sleep all day, or some just leaving you alone. So in short, Final Fantasy XII World is just brilliant, and it's probably its most strongest elements. Number 3, the content. I really like the absurd amount of stuff you can do in a game, from fighting hidden espers, extra dungeons, the amount of hunts you can go on, with most of the hunts having a story behind them, more or less, which is neat. And, well, Final Fantasy XII is just chock full of content, which I can really sink my teeth in when I first played the game. Number 4, the dialogue. Kind of. I'm putting the voice acting dialogue of Final Fantasy XII on number 4 here, because when you get down to it, compared to the other Final Fantasy games that's voiced, Final Fantasy XII is the best. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, Final Fantasy XII doesn't have the most flowing or engaging dialogue I've seen in a video game. But compared to Final Fantasy X and 13, it's a godsend. And I have to be honest, Final Fantasy X script, I found really awkward. I'm not sure if it's a voice direction on the script, but I just found the dialogue of that game to be incredibly awkward. Most of the dialogue of Final Fantasy X never felt natural to me, which really did detract me from the experience somewhat. It's not Star Ocean 4 level of bad in terms of dialogue, but yeah, I'd be lying if I say I enjoyed the dialogue in Final Fantasy X. And 13, the script in that game is just terrible. That game just had one of the worst one-liners I've heard ever. And compared to those two games, Final Fantasy XII is just a masterpiece in comparison. I mean, Final Fantasy XII doesn't have the most natural dialogue, but that style of dialogue is not what they're aiming for with the script they're going for. It has this more theatrical feeling to it, which really works. Okay, it doesn't work 100% of the time, but I still think the dialogue in Final Fantasy XII is much more effective than in X and 13. So, moving on. Number 5, the open-endedness of the licensing board system. Final Fantasy XII licensing board progression system is perhaps one of the more open JRPG progression systems I've seen. There's just so many options, a variety of builds to go through in the game, from different amount of weapons and armor, different amount of techniques you can learn, how many spells you can learn from the variety of schools of magic, from black magic, white magic, green magic, whatever magic. The licensing board system is just so open, and being able to customize each party member to how you want them is admittedly really fun. Number 6, the gambit system. Okay, hear me out. Admittedly, I have heard the complaints that the gambit system make it so the gameplay itself, which I think is exaggerated. Okay, it might be for normal battles, but surely the gambit system can't last you for a boss battle.
Long have I walked in hatred's company. As long as I can curse your name, I shall not be defeated.
Then come. Wield your hatred and crush me. I welcome it.
God damn it. Okay, seriously speaking, I think the gambit system is a neat idea with it allowing you to customize the AI, which is really neat. It's not a particularly new idea being able to customize your AI, since I have played Tales of Symphonia, which has a similar function with the strategy settings, and other games of the Tales series probably did it before Symphonia, and other games have done it already. But I have to say I really like how in-depth the options could get in Final Fantasy XII. And strangely enough, I do think the gambit system does have this strategy aspect into it in terms of preparing what type of gambit combination would work best on future enemies. And seeing that gambit combination you set up totally decimating the various enemies can be really rewarding. Yeah, the gambit system can make the gameplay itself, I'm not denying that. And I'd be lying that was an issue at the very least. So, but you can't really make the gameplay by itself till late game in my honest opinion. And even with the gambits, you can sometimes be wrong your gambits and have to take manual control of the characters. Okay, that's the good stuff. Yeah, let's get to the bad stuff that Final Fantasy XII does. Number 1. The restrictedness of using armor, weapons, and abilities. You know how I said the license boards was one of the good points of Final Fantasy XII? Well, this point totally contradicts that. Because when you get down to it, even when you learn how to use the weapon armor abilities, there is still some loopholes you have to hop through in order to use them. And firstly, I think having a license to use weapon and armor, each individual weapon and each individual armor, is pretty restrictive. I mean, I can appreciate them integrating multiple weapon types in the license board, but restricting each individual weapon and each individual armor that you can use and wear, that's really restrictive. And let's not forget how you cannot use any of the abilities, whether they be magic or techniques, you learn in the license boards unless you buy the scroll for them. Yeah, pretty BS. I think the system is far too restrictive for my tastes, and it really does go against the open-endedness of the license board system. Number 2. Individual characters do not feel unique to each other in terms of gameplay. I do praise earlier, I did like how you can effectively build each character to whatever you want them to be, but I do wish they were more unique to each other. This type of customization would be fine if there was like a class system in Final Fantasy XII, but there isn't, and every character can learn every type of ability without any real bad consequences, like there's no limitations, which makes every character feel samey. And one of the strengths in a party-based RPG to me is learning the strengths and weaknesses of each party member and basically coming up with ways how to make a party that really emphasizes each character's unique strengths but also covering their weaknesses. Trying to come up with that perfect synergy in a party-based RPG is a lot of fun for me. And in Final Fantasy XII, I don't get that feeling when I'm experimenting with the characters, since they all feel very similar to each other. Number 3. The characters. Most of the characters are an absolute bore to me, in my opinion. You get some interesting ones like Balthier and Bash, and Ash isn't too bad, but then you get the other half, which is Vaughn, Penelo, and Fran, who, quite frankly, got no point in the story. It could have just been written out of the story altogether. And there's not enough character interaction in the game, in my honest opinion. So as a result, I didn't really grow attached to any of the characters in Final Fantasy XII. Number 4. Vaughn's character design. I know, it's harsh to put one character art design as an entire negative point, but I can't help it. The character design of Van is atrocious! And as for his character, I don't hate him, but he's just so bland I can't hate him. If it wasn't for Roy from Fire and Sealed Swords, I would probably put Van as the most bland character I ever played. So you know what? Instead of putting number 4 as just Vaughn's character design, just put Vaughn himself. Number 5, Quickenings. Quickenings is just terrible. Just because of the fact that when you use Quickenings, you basically screw yourself. Because when you get down to it, using Quickenings, even especially level 3, drains all your MP. I mean, the Quickening themselves looks pretty cool, but using all your MP really hurts. I mean, if they insert a special gauge for Quickening, it would be okay. But as it is, using Quickenings basically limit all your offensive and defensive capabilities. So yeah, and those are mostly my main gripes with Final Fantasy XII. There are some things I'm indifferent to, like the combat system, which I think is not all that interesting, I have to be honest. But the combat system isn't terribly executed. It's executed well enough that it becomes a non-factor to me when I'm thinking of pros and cons for Final Fantasy XII. I do wish how the abilities could change the dynamic of the combat system more, like in Dragon Age Origins, but as is, it's not awful. It's just not all that good. At its worst, it can be kinda boring. So I guess you could add that one more to the negative side of this mini review. So yeah. So anyway, that's all the pros and cons for Final Fantasy XII to me. As I said, it's not a terrible game, but also not a game I think is great. The game just lands in the middle of the spectrum for me. It's well designed enough when some of the designs isn't contradicting with each other, and Final Fantasy XII does have a wonderful world to explore, but overall it's just a game that didn't really do much for me. So that's all for this video. What's your thoughts on Final Fantasy XII? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Please comment in the comment section, since I'm pretty curious about what people's opinion on Final Fantasy XII is.